This is the 1190 SX from Erik Buell Racing. Now, a lot of you remember Erik Buell as the maverick behind the famous Buell motorcycles. You'll also remember how Harley-Davidson closed down Buell motorcycles. They walked in one day and said, right, we're closing the company, you're all out of a job, except you, Mr. Buell. You're welcome to come and have a cushy job here at Harley-Davidson, building Harley-Davidsons. But he said no. What he did instead is he took his merry band of men and started Erik Buell Motorcycles, EBR. And for that, you have to have admiration. Yes, he quit the security of Harley-Davidson, but he also gained a whole lot of freedom. He was no longer constrained to just using Harley-Davidson engines. He could now do his own thing, and what he came up with was quite profound. And as you've probably noticed, this is a naked motorcycle. That means it hasn't got any fairing or wind protection or anything like that. Which is interesting because they say the V-twin engine on this bike pushes 185 horsepower. Now, if that is true, that would mean that this is the most powerful naked motorcycle available in South Africa. This whole horsepower thing works well with Buell's whole racing design philosophy, which is rigid frame, low unsprung weight, and a lot of mass centralization. Now, one of the problems with mass centralization is the fuel tank, especially when it's full of fuel, because it normally sits very high up and it doesn't bode well for the whole thing. Let's do a little exercise quickly. Can you at home tell me, where is the fuel tank on this bike? Go for it. If you said it is this plastic thing up here, you'd be wrong. The fuel tank is in fact here. You see, Erik Buell worked out that with his big frame and lots of rigidity, he has a whole lot of space. So why not put the fuel low down here in the frame? He also continued the philosophy of low unsprung weight. I mean, just look at the wheels on these things. It looks like two hubcaps glued together. There's absolutely no excess meat and therefore no excess weight. Then look at the rim disc on this thing. As said, it's mounted on the rim. That means that you only need one of them, which also saves weight. The dash is a full-color digital unit, and with it you can adjust a 20-level traction control system and check such things as diagnostics. Then look at these two diagonally mounted fans that blow warm air onto the rider's legs and arms, which is a good thing as South Africa plummets ever further into the depths of winter. Then have a look at this bike. It is both striking and futuristic. It looks like something from a RoboCop movie. You could just imagine some big metal man climbing on it and shooting bad guys. But there's more to a motorcycle than looks and specs. Let's go for a ride. Remember that Buell's passion has always been race tracks and race bikes, and this is very apparent with the SX. It is a thoroughbred sports bike. There are no creature comforts, no heated grips, no cruise control, no soft ride, no touring accessories. Heck, there's not even ABS for crying out loud. It is all about performance. The ride, like the chassis, is bone-shakingly rigid, but this also means that the handling is super sharp, like a race bike. When you sit on the bike, you sit very far forward. In fact, it almost feels like you're sitting on the actual handlebars. And what this means is that the weight is very much over the front wheel. The downside of this is that the SX is not a very wheelie-happy machine. But on the upside, it turns into corners the moment you nudge the handlebars. Yes, it's a V-twin, but it's been tuned for track use, which means that the horses only seem to rush in just after 6,000 RPM. It is not tuned for bottom-end torque and things like that for your daily commute. In fact, this bike scoffs at such things as commuting, touring, fuel economy, and other things best left to companies like, well, Honda. This is a bike you save for weekends, for those special moments, where you want to forget about anything responsible and just go, well, mental. Thank you, Erik Buell. Thank you for reminding us what sports bikes are actually about.
Okay, I have to admit up front that I've always been a bit of a fan of Erik Buell's motorcycles. They've always been a little bit mad and a little bit funky and a whole load of fun. Before we get into some details, though, Donovan, let's start with the EBR's best point, really, which is at 169 grand. The price is bang on, isn't it?
Yeah, because think about it, KTM, the Super Duke, our bike of the year last year, that's 189,000 rand. Remember, that's a mass production factory. This is just a merry band of men, a small band of men putting bikes together, and yet it's still 20 grand cheaper. That's amazing.
Okay, why do I get the distinct impression, though, that you're kind of holding back on me? I heard your kind of snorting derision of the claim it makes 185 horsepower. It doesn't, does it?
It might. So the problem is that, remember, Erik Buell and his clan are all racers. They're racetrack. And the thing about racers is they like the horsepower to be up high.
But it's a V-twin. Surely it's got mid-range.
Yeah. It's got a bit. You'll get on it and you'll outpace any car. But really, the power really comes on at about 6,000 RPM, but above 6,000. That is where you get the power. Below that, it's not that great.
Yeah, and I must admit, EBR stuff, it looks really good from a distance, but the closer you get, there's some fairly naff details on it, which I don't know if it's like Harley Davidson, they want you to just delve into the parts catalogue and throw carbon fibre at it. Not quite sure what's going on there. What about it? Well, let's place it in a kind of ranking then, Donovan. You mentioned the KTM Super Duke from last year, which was Bike of the Year. Second to that came the BMW S1000 Single R, which is their naked bike. Where does it stack up?
It's kind of, okay. It depends who you are, I'll put it that way. I mean, to just a man in the street who doesn't know anything about bikes, that sort of person may not be impressed. But if you're somebody who's a shall we say, an absolute bike lover, someone who loves sort of the build of bikes, someone who loves the history of the bike, everything like that, I think you might go for the EBR, just based on Erik Buell and his appreciation. I'd buy it just to say, thank you,
It is
Mr.
different,
Buell.
it is unique. I thought you were hovering a long time there, Donovan. I thought you were going to hurt yourself as you sort of dropped squarely on top of the fence. But I'm glad you've jumped to one side. Well, that's a pretty good review of the EBR, I think you'll agree. OK, thanks, Donovan, and thanks to Harry for his input earlier on. That's all we've got time for this week. We will, of course, be back again next week.